So many of our mothers, brothers, fathers, children were killed in crossfire. If they don't say that, they have been killed because he or she was a collaborator. Killed because they were running away with the terrorists. Killed because they were actively assisting terrorists. And the list went on and on, among others. We must ask ourselves these pertinent questions. Why did these comrades and masses die? For what did they have to endure such painful and humiliating deaths? These are the questions that we must pose and ask ourselves. The answer is they were fighting for two main fundamental principles. One, our land, Sabbath, Ivu, Ragagatsikai. Number two, the right to vote removing unqualified franchise, which had been put by Ian Smith and his succeeding regimes, that only a few would be able to vote and select their leaders.
I think as a citizen, I have a right to air my views. And in Zimbabwe, every citizen has the right to air his or her views. I'm not at all afraid because I don't see any physical threat to me. My belief is that if the Constitution is undermined, Parliament as the legislative arm of government must protect it. Also, you will realize that in the draft, these opportunists have quickly moved to try and remove Section 212 of the Constitution, which mandates the defense forces to defend the Constitution. And I think that is a way of trying to manipulate the constitutional process. I don't want to believe that the defense forces are derelicting on their duty, but they are watching the process. And when ZANU-PF itself becomes a security threat, I want to believe they will advise accordingly.
There was a report on, BBC, which they tried, to shoot down. I don't know. There's an account that is running under the name, is it Bete or something like that? And I know the person, who's behind, that account. But they tried, to shoot, that down as if they gave a one-sided, narrative, which is the same thing now that people who are saying the reassignment of JC was a good idea. Because the report that she gave was a one-sided, take on what happened, and given all these things, that are going on, and the way that this has happened, remembering that Emerson Mnangagwa himself, he said he wasn't going to be seeking anything. 2028, he goes home. He goes to his farm. He does, farming. And there was even a question on persuaders. Say, I'm going to persuade the persuaders not to persuade me, etc. And then he makes, such a move. What does it say and mean about his involvement in this whole thing as the president?
Look, over the past week, I have decided not to just talk about the CAB 3 process, but I've decided to go and look at the ZANU-PF constitution itself to see whether what they are trying to do with CAB has been approved by ZANU-PF constitution and the processes and systems thereof. Hence, I have gone to look, and some of these things, Justice Mahoney, who's here, has been instrumental in pointing out some of these loopholes, which forced me now to go and read the ZANU-PF constitution. The president is being said that ZANU-PF want him to go for up until 2030. And this was supposedly a resolution reached by ZANU-PF. But the problem is that that resolution was reached at conference, but it has not been enunciated by what? By Congress. Yet, the Central Committee of ZANU-PF is only allowed to implement to policies, programs, and also decisions made by Congress. There is no way within the constitution of ZANU-PF that says that they can implement or push policies made by conference. They can only push policies that have been enunciated by Congress. And then in number 3, that very same Central Committee is supposed to then take policies and decisions off the Congress, and they are supposed to push them into central government. And they're supposed to oversee that they're pushed through central government. So it is clear that CAP 3 has been pushed through from the Central Committee, which only is supposed to take its mandate from Congress, and there's been no Congress. So therefore, the decision to extend Emmerson Mnangagwa's term to 2030 through central government by changing the constitution has not been put through properly within ZANU-PF itself. Number 2, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who's being said he must go through to 2030, has not been re-elected in a conference by ZANU-PF. And from our understanding, there is 2 terms for a president in our constitution. There's also 2 terms according to the ZANU-PF constitution that a president is supposed to run, because there's supposed to be concurrency and there's supposed to be a relationship between the ZANU-PF constitution and the national constitution. And so right now, they are saying President Mnangagwa must go until 2030, but yet he has not been elected in the conference that is supposed to happen next year in 2027 for him to be eligible to be put through by the party as its candidate for presidency. But how do they know that Emmerson Mnangagwa will be given that extension in ZANU-PF? How have they chosen to put him forward for 2030 when he hasn't yet been selected at the conference of ZANU-PF, where he could easily be challenged and where they could deny him the continuation of his presidency? Additionally, the Central Committee that has been pushing through this amendment that came from conference and not from Congress, meaning that they've pushed through something that is not legally ratified by ZANU-PF, has co-opted people into the Central Committee who have not been elected at Congress. But yet Congress is the only body that can elect members of the Central Committee. So there's already a lot of illegalities within ZANU-PF and not following of the constitution of ZANU-PF that has seen them pushing through decisions that are not legally ratified or that have not been properly constituted in ZANU-PF because they are not coming from Congress. And these have been pushed through by the Central Committee to become government policy. And now there is an attempt to change the constitution from a policy that has not been properly instituted in ZANU-PF itself. So there is an abuse of power through and through. There is an abuse of process through and through. And there's an ignoring of the constitution internally in ZANU-PF. And that is important for us because that constitution of ZANU-PF, the policies that come from ZANU-PF, the programs that come from ZANU-PF are then pushed into national government by the Central Committee. So therefore, ZANU-PF policies become national policy at some point or the other. And that's why now you're seeing that there is a disconnection. Every day you are hearing Themba Mliswa talking about how it is that people are not defending the president, they are not fighting for CAP 3, they are not doing anything. He's now an outsider trying to take issue with the people in ZANU-PF for not pushing and advancing CAP 3 that their Congress or the people never accepted or never asked for. So there is a clear there is a clear indication that ZANU-PF is no longer the one that is running the country. But there is a small elite and a small cabal that do not take their instructions from the people, because ZANU-PF says that it is the people that lead through Congress. So those people are no longer leading to Congress, but they are now an elite that was put into Central Committee without following processes. That elite has got an external cabinet that meets with the president every day at 7 o'clock at the president's private offices, and they are making decisions alone. And these decisions are now the ones that you are seeing that are arbitrarily doing things like ignoring the constitution, human rights violations, arresting people, meeting to discuss what Rutendo said and potentially eliminating Rutendo, and so forth and so on. So it has become a pattern, and a pattern that illustrates an arbitrariness of a few individuals who lack experience, who lack a bigger body of decision making that could moderate decisions that are making rash decisions, which include reappointment of key positions because of the fact that those key positions have carried out their jobs to the T, and they're carrying out of their jobs to the T.
Yeah,
That's not good.
on that one day, I saw you, talking about, the DG's, removal, and saying that, the rumor is that he refused to be forced into something that he did not, believe in, like to use, the CIO to go after those that were against, CAB. Can you talk to me? Can you talk to me more about, that? What's, you are giving, this presentation of yours?
Yeah, so I had already heard that the DG was going to be removed in December already, from some of the key people who sit in this new or parallel cabinet that I'm talking about. That meets every 7 o'clock with the president on a daily basis. Every day. So if you go to some of these guys, you can go and visit these people. I remember once when Geza was really giving them a tough time, I was called to Harare. And I was summoned on the basis, why are you quiet about Geza? And I said, I'm not interested in the Geza issue. And I believe that dealing with this Geza issue comes with threats. And they were like, no, please come to Harare. And they gave me money. And this is where the problem, this is where the talk of a vehicle comes from. I was already using a vehicle, and so I was offered a Land Cruiser to speak about Geza. So I said, but I don't want to speak about Geza. This thing is dangerous. And honestly speaking, I didn't necessarily feel that everything that Geza was saying was entirely wrong. But I was being coerced. So I was then asked to come. And when I got there at 6 o'clock. My flight got there at about 6 o'clock, went through to the offices. And so we couldn't talk with the people at the office because soon after they had to leave to go to this meeting, which they go every day at about the same time.
Right.
So within this visit, I was then told that, no, the DG is going. And I asked, why is the DG going? And you need to understand, let me build context before I talk about the second DG. The first DG, Moyo. When Moyo came in, Moyo had an intelligence report that was very scathing of the so-called, I don't like to use the word Zigananda, but let's use it because we understand who's being talked about. And he had earmarked or targeted certain of those Gananda to be arrested. Now, how do I know this? Remember, DG Moyo tried to recruit me. And within trying to recruit me, DG Moyo had people that he sent through to try and undertake the recruitment. Those people are known to me. They're still friends to me today. These are also the same people that when our monies were not coming through to pay lawyers in South Africa, were invited to the meeting by DG Moyo as people who know me and had to sit in the meeting. So outside, they're the ones that give me information in the inside. And also, even Themba Mliswa has already also told me, in fact, this one, Themba Mliswa told me that when DG Moyo came in, he had a dossier to arrest one of the most important and prominent Ziganad. And that report was taken and given to the president, and there was already an arrest warrant that had been prepared. But the president then decided to ask DG Moyo not to do it. And he differed with them on a number of issues. Processes and systems during elections, the way that the opposition was being dealt with. He did not believe in using violence. He believed in using other techniques. He believed in sitting with the opposition, talking to the opposition, and that did not sit well inside. They believed in using the power of intelligence to control the opposition and to eliminate threats within the opposition. DG Moyo did not believe that because he was a diplomat at heart. I understand that this one who replaced DG Moyo was supposed to come in and do what it is that DG Moyo was not willing to do. And Mnangagwa did not do that. And he also was not in good books with some of these people who are said to be a parallel government. He did not subscribe to that. And when asked to use this intelligence organization to clamp down on those who are not supporting this bill, he was then taken out. For instance, last 2 weeks ago, when I began to speak, Mnangagwa reached out through one of his agents. They said that the DG wanted us to meet, and he wanted us to discuss what we need to do to stop all this noise, this mudslinging on social media, and for me to stick to what I usually do, which is talking about the Good Zimbabwe story. And he said he had been given an instruction by his boss, which is Mnangagwa, for me to come through. I refused because I knew that within the intelligence, Mnangagwa was making decisions that were being second guessed by another lady who's a DDG there. This is why Mzembe was arrested. Yet Mzembe was brought into the country on the understanding through Mnangagwa that there was a negotiation process that could take place between him and the president, and he would not be arrested. But when Mzembe came in, that decision was Mnangagwa's decision, and Mnangagwa's assurances were then betrayed. So it's that duplicity, it's that double-facedness, it's this lying and not keeping to promises and abusing this institution for the purposes of serving this elite parallel cabinet that Mnangagwa was not happy to do. And that is also what put him in trouble. And that's why he's been fired. But for a president to fire the head of intelligence, two heads of intelligence in a period of 2 years, that in its own respect is very, 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 very concerning. It shows instability. It weighs down the morale of the morale of the intelligence officers. It keeps changing the intelligence strategy. When you read Bonyongwe's book, he spells out what it took to build this intelligence and to put the ethos that was in this intelligence organization and to professionalize it by emulating a number of intelligence agencies across the world. That is now beginning to fall apart. Hence, you see that our intelligence system has become weaker, and people are punished within the intelligence now for writing reports that are honest and critical. Mnangagwa is said to have given the government a report that says that this CAP 3 is a risk. It's a national security risk potentially. And this parallel cabinet that continues to break the rules and continues to benefit a few people is also a national security threat, which is what DG Moyo was also saying, but both have been ignored. Now you look at this in line with the removal of JSE. JSE is not an appointee of an NGO. She's not an appointee of a US human rights assessment institution. She is not a member of Amnesty International. She's a member of a chapter 12 institution created by our government through the Constitution in order to be an oversight body on human rights issues. The fact that she was fired for giving a critical report to this process is an indictment on the government. But the fact that it happens on the same day with the intelligence head who is refusing to be used by parallel structures that are not constitutional and that are not legal, and is refusing to do the dirty work and to abuse people and to violate human rights is really, really, really an indictment. But it also shows that the administration is really, 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 really under pressure. And it's beginning to make questionable decisions and mistakes in its decisions. But before I finish, what is going to be an indictment for them is that report given by Jesse is official. It cannot be erased. It's coming from internally. It cannot be dismissed as a document from the imperialists or a document of regime change. But it is seen as a proper appraisal and indictment of the Zimbabwean government and how it treats its people in processes of democracy. One of the things that we need to remember, a lot of times people don't want to consider, is that the power that you're trying to change actually rests within ZANU-PF itself, because that's where systems and processes have been abrogated in the first place. There had not been the followings of processes and systems and the constitution of ZANU-PF. And if we were to create enough information, enough pressure for ZANU-PF to act internally, you would actually see that a big difference could actually come from that, because it means that the CAB 3 process can be challenged from a constitutional perspective within ZANU-PF, nullifying it in the beginning. Because what is happening is ultra virus. It's ultra virus, the ZANU-PF constitution, and therefore this so-called resolution has not even been passed in ZANU-PF, but it has been made government policy by a central committee that is not even properly constituted and has got people who are not elected into it properly and regularly. Why don't we also look at that avenue of trying to stop trying to get ZANU-PF to stop this process on its own before we even look at challenging, or while we are looking at challenging it from the other perspectives? And of course, now we've got enough ammunition to go to court. Jesse Majome's Chapter 12 institution gave a report. That report in itself tells us exactly what was done wrong and what makes the process of the CAB consultations illegitimate and thus void. We need to use all those processes at once, because you can chew gum and walk all at the same time. That's what I would like to say, because sometimes I feel we get too caught up in...
But if we don't know how to use the actual instruments of state that are delegated to be the ones who are the responsible adults, and then we continue to use the same system that you are saying creates the problem, and we replicate it and create a parallel defense system that is a copycat of the one that is the destructive instrument that is being used. So now you are saying, similarly as ZANU-PF, which has abrogated its duty to follow the rule of law and has created an abstract structure that undermines the instruments of state. Let's create ourselves from that ideology, a defense that uses the same approach. We are now going to not separate power. We are not going to use the instruments of state that are the responsible adult and hold them accountable. We are now going to just start fielding our information to the executive of the country to be the one that now must sit with this arm and interfere into all these other processes, because somehow he has become the ultimate. Even in processes, we are extending it. We are saying our help must come from the thing that constructed the problem.
That's not what we're saying, Mercy. We are saying that the institution that the president needs to build his legitimacy, which is ZANU-PF first and foremost, and then the nation, we need to stop being complicit and we need to challenge him. So ZANU-PF can challenge the position of the president, his non-election, and his eligibility for him to be going for a 2030. That can be challenged within ZANU-PF successfully, and it can be stopped there. So this is not involving the executive. It is
but
using
when we
the
start
system.
To speak of
it is using the institution.
Okay, I'll let Rutendo land, and then you come in.
The president of Zimbabwe has legitimacy because of ZANU-PF. And for him to be legitimate in ZANU-PF, he has to be elected by the Congress of ZANU-PF. And that hasn't happened for him to be talking 2030. So why are you not talking to ZANU-PF to say this process has not been completed? This person has not been accepted. The resolution being used has not been coming from Congress. So there should be already a null and void, or at least an ultra virus challenge to what has been done by a central committee that has not been elected properly, with individuals that are not supposed to be there, who are making laws now for the nation and pushing things through cabinet into an amendment to the constitution that is ultra virus because it's already null and void from ZANU-PF itself. We need to look at all those processes that challenge the institution that gives the legitimacy. Talking about the presidency does not mean anything, because the presidency needs us to accept. He needs us to acquiesce to what it is that he's doing. And if ZANU-PF says we don't acquiesce to your decision to try and go to 2030, yet we haven't elected you, that automatically means that what he's doing becomes void. If we as the citizens also then say, before we even start talking about that, let's look at the process that you've used to try and push your amendment. And we challenge that with the report that Majome gave us. Those are the practical things we can do. And you yourself said, Woza women went to court in Rhodesia. I mean, sorry, no, not Woza women. Woza women went to court in Zimbabwe. When the court in Zimbabwe did not give them decisions, they went out to the African Council of Human Rights and People's Rights. We have to now use those very same processes. Finish the internal processes. If the internal processes don't give us decisions, we go out. Those are the practical things we can do. Otherwise, what you are then needing to discuss is, are you willing to go on the road? I think we all know the answer to that. People are not willing to go on the road. So let's talk about what we can practically do rather than to build pies in the sky.
Right. So basically, you are talking about going to the genesis of it all. That ZANU-PF needs to put its house in order. ZANU-PF needs to stop whatever it is that is happening around the president. The creation of these affiliates, the creation of these people who are now surrounding the president, who are now making decisions on behalf of a political party that is supposed to be the driver in making such decisions. And you're saying that we need now to to call for a reset of everything, where ZANU-PF becomes the arbiter, or becomes the entity that controls everything and wrestle whatever power that has been abrogated to all these other individuals who are now surrounding the president. Take the power away from those, and when we get back to ZANU-PF following its constitution, then this thing here that we're talking about will be dead in the water.
And we do that while we're also challenging it in the other ways as well, through challenging the processes of the consultation, challenging CAP 3 and how it's being implemented, challenging the fact that they want to pass it through the parliament without going for referendum. We do all these things parallel, but influence ZANU-PF as well, because at the end of the day, I think they've got the keys to unlock this, and we know they're dissatisfied. Hence, Themba Mliswa is fuming every day about how members of ZANU-PF and senior members of ZANU-PF and the structures of ZANU-PF are not supporting CAP 3. Take advantage of that disgruntlement. Take advantage of the firing of the CIO head, and the head of a Chapter 12 institution, because it shows that there's fracture within the institution itself, within ZANU-PF itself, within its inner circles itself, and within its government institutions. Take advantage of that, because clearly there is a discord and a division within that we are not currently taking advantage of.
We are to first fix ZANU-PF's problems when we have a method of fixing our country's problem. To me, ZANU-PF's members, by not saying no to something, they are by omission agreeing, they are giving consent. So me as an outside person not liking what ZANU-PF is doing does not mean that the people in ZANU-PF do not like what is happening. I mean, the decisions that they make, there is nothing that says to them between congresses, decisions made by them should not influence how they influence the party incumbent to make decisions. They clearly instructed in their conference that government and party must begin the work of creating a comprehensive framework that will ensure that what they pass in 2030. So they created a activity. It is them, ZANU-PF people, who empowered cabinet. It is in their recommendation number 2 to begin the work. They didn't say begin the work in 2030, in 2026 when we have our conference. No, they didn't say that. They said begin the work that will ensure that what we write here today will fully operationalize what our futuristic plan is. So I don't understand where people want to omit that ZANU-PF itself in its structures did pre-commencement works, and these are the pre-commencement works that must be done. Do a feasibility study, start to implement things that will create the backdrop of where we will begin our supremacy after we come back from Congress. So these are the pre-works that are happening. He was empowered by the party to begin that work.
So why is everybody not supporting him? That's what
I
you're
haven't seen them.
understand.
They have to do that in their party. They cannot use the excuse of by omission. No, they must act. They must
But he's not
to
getting
say they don't
support,
want it.
hence.
They have not seen any objections.
But he's not getting support. And
No,
this is why
the
people are
country has
crying.
people the right of freedom of association and disassociation. Those who associated with the party are also exercising their right to not say anything, just like a vote. The vote is presented to me. If I don't vote, the ones who voted make the decision. I was okay to omit to act. So you can't speak of the people who omitted to say no. They were agreeing that the ones who will say yes carry the weight of their party, and those who acted created what their party is moving on as. If they are objecting, they must act in objection. I can't myself imagine for them what they should do. Otherwise, I should join ZANU-PF and become an objector in ZANU-PF.
They're objecting by not implementing and supporting. And that's what
a crime of omission is not an excuse. They are agreeing.
It's time that the security sector chooses between the country, its legacy, or a person and his ambitions. Because anything that we see today, it just boils down to the fact that Emmerson Mnangagwa wants to turn Zimbabwe into a kingdom for his children. Meaning the guy had a mission from the time Mugabe invited him. You know, I feel like Mnangagwa was playing the politics of the old, of conquering. So he came with one mission to conquer the entire country and then owns it. You tell me what you think in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, God bless you and God bless Zimbabwe. I love you. Bye for now.